What's up? I'm Peter.
And I'm Riley.
And for years now, we've been working on a cinematic VR action-adventure shooter game.
In this video, we'll show you how we went from zero experience and an empty Unreal project to our nearly ready early access release.
This is HEARTSHOT. Back in 2020, I was working full-time at a film studio called Corridor Digital doing visual effects and animation. There was some downtime, so my boss, Nico, thought it might be a good idea for me to learn Unreal Engine. So I found this great course that guides you through the creation of 2 simple games and teaches you some code along the way. Turns out Nico was actually talking about virtual filmmaking and character stuff, which I will admit makes more sense for a film studio, but game design was just so fascinating that I had to keep going. Starting to understand the way code works just blew open my imagination, and for the first time, all of those passing thoughts that you have about what would make a fun game became actionable ideas. The bosses over at Corridor have always been super supportive in giving their employees agency and allowing them to explore what they find interesting. This led to us making a video where I created a Smash Brothers clone starring people from The Office. It was a ton of fun and forced me to really improve my coding skills. But I'm not gonna lie, it started turning the gears, if you know what I mean. Flashback to early 2020. Valve finally releases another game in the esteemed Half-Life universe. And not only was there going to be a new Half-Life game, but it was going to be made exclusively for virtual reality. So I saved up and splurged on a headset and was absolutely blown away by this game. Walking through creepy corridors waiting for enemies to jump out became legitimately terrifying, and hearing bullets whiz overhead as you physically duck to take cover had such an exhilarating physicality to it. I was hooked. Back to 2021, I started messing around with virtual reality and Unreal Engine, just for fun. And Unreal has a pretty solid VR template, so it was pretty straightforward to start building functionality on top of it. I messed around with physics-based hands, set up some weapons, and even got a simple grabbing system working. It wasn't easy by any means, I was banging my head against the wall for a lot of it, but I learned that most problems I encountered were actually pretty solvable given enough time and research. And the idea of making my own game no longer seemed so far-fetched. Riley, it's your turn.
So, while Peter and I both made movies growing up, we also played a lot of games. When we moved into a place together in late 2020, this porch became our morning coffee, chat, brainstorm haven. And when Pete mentioned getting into Unreal 4, I also started to dip my toes in, and our conversations meandered towards making a game. By mid-2021, we had set our sights on making a VR game, combining our cinematic background and our love for VR. But we still had a lot to learn. So while Peter delved into Scary Nightmare Unreal blueprints, I got into story and level design. I read books, I took notes, and started building levels and making in-game art. We listened to a bunch of GDC talks, and watched pretty much every GMTK video.
Hey, Mark here.
If you want a masterclass in game development and design, these channels are a goldmine. The more we worked, the better the features and levels looked. There is so much content, like blueprints, levels, art, everything, that will never be used or seen. But the process of making it was our education. Our first concept was a globe-trotting action epic rom-com, but that turned out to be way too big in scope. So we decided to do a prequel that would only be 3 levels, but that quickly got out of scope too. However, in making that prequel, we had fallen in love with this setting. This huge, dilapidated, post-Soviet snow base. We distilled all of our characters and concepts and created a full campaign in that setting. We removed the romance aspect and changed the look of the game, which started as a retro PS1 style but grew more modern as time went on.
Yeah, I started out trying to make everything look like it was from the early 2000s, which was a fun style and also had the added benefit of not being very computationally expensive. But using the nice lighting system made everything look prettier, and using normal maps and roughness maps made the models more interesting, and of course you want fancy detailed sound, and before I knew it the PS1 style was gone, and now it's a weird retro-modern low-resolution hybrid, and it's too late to change it. But it also looks cool, so we're embracing it. It was around this time that our incredible composer, Benjamin Squires, joined the team. I've been a fan of his since 2017, when his fan score for Spider-Man Homecoming went viral. Later on, when I was working on our short film Scooty, I reached out to see if he wanted to collaborate. We had a great time working together, and the music was so dang good that when the time came, I just had to ask him to jump on board for the game. Since then, he's been pumping out track after track of delicious, moody, epic bangers that you'll hear in the game.
In May of 2022, I quit my job to work full-time on HEARTSHOT. From this point on, we've been surviving on savings, freelance work, and Trader Joe's. For the rest of the year, we kept hacking away at various features, levels, art, and a bunch of other stuff, but progress kind of started to stall. The great thing about not having a boss is the absolute freedom to do whatever you want. And the bad thing about not having a boss is a complete lack of direction and motivation if you're not careful. So, in 2023, we refocused, revamped, rejuvenated, restructured, got ourselves on track, and set our sights on a 2024 release. We scrapped what wasn't working, restructured the plot, chased what was fun and exciting, and committed to getting it done. But also Baldur's Gate 3 and Spider-Man 2 came out, so in June and July, we submitted the paperwork and created an LLC to release the game under. We planned out a roadmap for Steam Early Access and got a big whiteboard. Now we have 2. Why Early Access?
Early Access is a program on Steam where developers can release an early, unfinished, and usually cheaper version of their game to get player feedback and partial funding as they work to complete their game. While we're going to be finishing HEARTSHOT no matter how successful the Early Access release is, getting funding in the form of purchases will be a massive help in allowing us to further focus on the game and not have to take breaks to do freelance work. It'll also let players get their hands on the game while it's still in the oven, helping to guide the direction of the game based on what everyone finds fun or interesting. The initial plan was a January 11th early access release on Steam, but between the holidays, the addition of an arena mode, and a desire to make our first release as polished as possible, we're pushing the release to February 29th. This first release will include Act 1, which is the first third of the campaign, and an arena mode. We intend on releasing Act 2 and 3, as well as some new arena maps later this year as a free update to the game. And once all the parts are out, we plan on optimizing the game for an Oculus standalone release. But for the next month, I'll be working on ironing out bugs, finishing cinematic sequences, and improving our enemy AI.
And I've been building and optimizing our first arena level, which is this playground-esque shipping facility in a dense jungle environment. It's super fun, I'm really excited to see people play it. I'm also updating and finalizing our Part 1 levels. We're shooting for a consistent style and level of detail across the game, and a satisfying gameplay loop between action, exploration, puzzles, and story moments.
Thanks for following along with our development journey so far. We're so excited to get the game out there, and we'll continue to post devlogs to show our progress. If you'd like more frequent updates, feel free to follow us on Instagram and TikTok. And if the game looks like something you're interested in, feel free to wishlist it on Steam. Till next time.